Welcome back, everyone, to Pop Crime TV's The Outlier podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Conlon, and today I have a very special guest that I am very excited about, Terry Dunn Meurer, the legendary co-creator of Unsolved Mysteries and the director of the highly anticipated 5-part docuseries, A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Read. Now, the tragic death of Officer John O'Keefe and the case against Karen Read has truly captivated the nation here. Was it a tragic accident, a murder, or was Karen Read framed? If you watch this channel, you know that I have gone deep. And I have my own thoughts. But Terry and her team had unprecedented access to the trial, Karen's attorneys, and even Karen Read herself. So we're going to get into everything that they uncovered. And I mean, I have so many questions for Terry. Did she get any further into what the truth is here? So I'm going to bring Terry in. Hey, Terry, welcome to the show.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I was so grateful to receive early access to this documentary, this docuseries. I watched it. Oh my gosh, I was on the edge of my seat, but I have to tell you, I had some strong opinions during the trial based on what I saw. And then I watched this and I was thinking, well, maybe things are not quite what they seem. So let me just ask you, first of all, has Karen and her team, have they seen this documentary ahead of the release on March 17th?
No, they have not seen the documentary at all. Very, very early on, we showed them just a very rough clip of about 5 minutes of footage that we had cut together just so they could see what they look like on camera. But other than that, they have not screened the series.
Wow. Okay. So they didn't need any type of let us sign off on this before you air it privileges or anything like that.
No, they didn't ask for that.
They didn't ask for that? Wow, I'm shocked. Okay, that's interesting. So when you were putting this together and you were filming this, did you have any sort of opinion as to what happened, just based on your own research?
What we did is we really wanted to approach this in a very unbiased, very objective way. We wanted to tell both sides of the story. It was Karen and her attorney, Alan Jackson, who brought us in. They actually invited us to do this film about the pretrial and the trial. You can't just tell the story of the defense without telling the story of the prosecution. So we really had to take out, there's so much content. This is such a complicated case. There's hard evidence, and then there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, and then there's just a lot of speculation around this case. So we had over, not counting the trial footage, we have over 250 hours of footage that we shot in the war room, in their hotel room, in the car, in a lot of interview footage. So we had to sift through that and make the most balanced presentation we could of what the prosecution's main points were and what the defense's main points were.
Okay, so you attended most of the first trial.
We did not actually attend the trial. We had a feed coming off of the camera that was in the courtroom, and we recorded that feed. So that's how we got our footage of the trial. Usually we would film with them in the morning on the way to the courthouse. And then while they were in the trial, we'd either be listening outside or we'd be doing interviews with other people that were involved in the case.
Okay, understood. I mean, when I watched this, I'll be honest, I thought that there was a lot that the state did not prove in the first trial. I was kind of like, wow, when I saw, I mean, for me, it was ARCA. It was Dr. Scorty Bello. It was a lot of this, like, well, wait, this just doesn't make sense. But I'm not necessarily buying into a conspiracy either. But I'm kind of like, I don't necessarily know if she hit him. And then it's like the whole, no one in the house saw him, but no one really saw him outside. Where did he go? What happened? So in my opinion, I kind of watched this and I was like, oh, I think that maybe Karen and her team decided to do this thinking she would be acquitted. Do you think that is maybe their mindset? Because I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want things that she said in this documentary to be out there in the public before my second trial.
I think they did feel like that she would be acquitted. In conversations we had, I definitely got that feeling. When we got closer to deliberations, and actually during deliberations, that's when they started to wonder if this was going to be an acquittal or not. I think they expected a verdict to come in even that day, the first day, and then it didn't come in the first day, it didn't come in the second day, it didn't come in the third day, and then the interviews took a different tone, and you could see Karen getting more emotional, and the defense team getting more nervous about what the verdict was going to be.
So when this trial ended in a hung jury, nobody said to you anything like, hey, maybe can you take this out, or can you maybe not include when we said that, or no one said that. So it wasn't.
No, during the course of the filming, they would say something, and they'd say, Terry, don't use that. And I told them from the very beginning, if they could call me 2 weeks later and say, I was thinking, I don't use that, I would respect that decision. So there were times, in fact, even when they were driving to or from the courthouse, they, especially after at the end of the day, they'd be talking about what happened in the courtroom that day. And I'd be following in the van, listening to the conversation, because there wasn't enough room in the car from me and the DP, and they'd be talking. They go, Terry, don't use that. They would be talking into the mic, so that, because they knew I was listening to everything they were saying. So
Right.
No, so we respected that. If there's something that they didn't want us to use, we didn't use it. And there were times we didn't have full access. There were times when they said, you know what, we really need the room here, and so we would just quietly leave until they were ready for us to come back.
Right. Okay. And did you guys reach out to any of the witnesses?
We did. We did reach out to the witnesses, and I didn't speak to any directly. I spoke to the attorneys that were representing them, and they, for very good reason, they didn't want to do any interviews. I don't think they interviewed with anyone before the first trial, and I don't think they've interviewed since, because they know they have to go on the stand. And it's, as you know, it's been a very divisive case. It's been a very hostile case. They have been attacked verbally in pretty devastating ways, I'd say. So I think they just would like to avoid the media exposure, for sure. If I were them, I would too.
Right. And it's interesting. And the first thing I thought of here is there is a motion for Hank Brennan to get all of these transcripts that was granted, and everything she kind of said to you in this documentary or docuseries. I was shocked at some of these admissions. I mean, she admitted to having 6 drinks, which we had never heard before, Terry. It had been kind of up in the air how many drinks she had. And I guess whoever you speak to, about this, everybody has their own thing they could say, right? It was 1 drink an hour over the course of X many hours. That's a lot of drinks for a small person. I mean, I think that alcohol played a huge role in this case with everybody involved. I mean, what did you make of that admission with how many drinks she had and just alcohol in general?
That was an interesting interview, because she was very, very forthcoming, and she had, you can tell as she was speaking, that she had put a lot of thought into how many drinks she did have and which one she actually drank and how many shots were put into that one. There was a lot of alcohol involved. John O'Keefe had been drinking. They had both been drinking. And yeah, I mean, the prosecutors did a timeline of her alcohol intake in the courtroom, and he said 9 drinks.
Right.
Karen said 6, but 6 is a lot. 6 is a lot. The vodka sodas.
Well, yeah, I mean, she did go into a lot of detail about, porn. That's what I was really surprised about. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh, stop. But, it was that, but it was also a timeline that I kind of put together in my head, which is, and look, I think that the murder charge in this has always been a huge overreach. I never thought that this was a murder case. I really didn't, especially when it comes to Karen Reed. So watching this and seeing it all play out, Terry, I was like, well, wait, she actually said she was ready to take some kind of culpability at some point because she didn't actually know. until I felt like the Commonwealth charged her with murder. And then her team gets this call and says, hey, look at someone inside the house. Well, how do you expect a defense attorney to ignore that when you've got a client that's being charged with murder, right?
Well, the second-degree murder charge happened after the informant came forward and said, take a look at the people in the house. So she hadn't been upcharged. She wasn't upcharged until after that happened.
She was arrested in February 2022, and then she was arrested in June of 2022. But then in May of 2023 is when I felt like that was when the whole conspiracy was pushed. So maybe the call wasn't made.
David Yannetti talks about the call that he got a few days after that John was killed from the informant, and that's the first moment that he said, "Oh, you know what? Maybe there's somebody else who was involved in this." And Ted Daniel, one of the reporters we interviewed, he actually said, if that guy hadn't made that phone call, we might not even be here today. And so that did happen very early on. And Karen doesn't talk about thinking that something else had happened until that call came in. She never said at the scene, or I don't believe later, well, he went into the house, so what happened? She never mentioned that that I know of, that I'm aware of. She didn't say that to us.
Right. Okay. So, but I guess my whole thing was, yes, like Ted said, right? We might not be here if that call wasn't made. And also I felt like when you're being charged with murder, you have to have some kind of a defense here, because it's a murder charge, and here comes this defense, out of the blue. So I think that it was possibly a combination of the upcharge and of course the call. But that just got me thinking. I was just like, so, right, maybe, she hears this and she really didn't think she did it, but she wasn't ruling it out either, if that makes sense, right?
It does. And Alan Jackson and his team from LA didn't come in until later, as you say. David Yannetti from Boston was her attorney up until that time. And I think it was in the time, you're right about that, when she got upcharged, that's when they said, okay, we need to bring in some additional defense help here.
Yeah. I mean, overall, Terry, it was really well done. I don't think she's going to be happy with what she said to you. I don't. I really was like, but again, it's her choice to talk. Me personally, I wouldn't have said all that, but also you could argue that she's an open book. She says she has nothing to hide, right? So I don't know what to think. It's so confusing still.
Yeah, you could tell she really, really wanted to tell her story. And that's what she says at the top of the series. This is my testimony. I know I'm not going to be able to probably go on the stand, but I want the world to know what my side of the story is. And she had done small interviews here and there, but she hadn't really told the full story. And then part of the story is the ups and downs of the trial. She didn't know what that trial was going to look like when we started filming with her. They didn't know. Nobody did. They didn't know what witnesses were going to be called. They didn't know what evidence was going to be presented. We were all kind of in the same boat of not knowing where this is going, which was one of the things that made this such an interesting project. Is we didn't know what the next day was even going to look like.
I mean, watching this trial in real time, it was almost like, is this real life? Is this really happening? Especially with Michael Proctor. That it was insane. And that's when I kind of, with Proctor and in my opinion, the horrible investigation into the death of one of their own, I was thinking to myself, well, you didn't necessarily need to have this conspiracy, because I feel like maybe, you could have gotten off with just this crappy investigation and this investigator, that I feel like has a personal bias here. And yeah, so I just feel like the whole thing has gotten so out of hand and so convoluted and confusing, and it didn't have to be this way.
It is a very confusing case. It took us hours and hours and days, weeks, months to try and sort through all just the data that was presented in the trial. Even the reporters we interviewed, and I have to believe the jury, were just, the prosecution brings in a strong defense, and the defense brings in a strong witness or expert, and then the defense brings in a strong expert, and you're kind of left with, well, I don't know, I'm not an expert, I don't know. So I think Christina Rex, one of the reporters, she says, I'm not an expert, and everybody was trying to sort through that to try and land something. There were some points that I think that they did land, but it's a very, very, very complicated case. And it's like I said, circumstantial evidence, but also all the speculation that surrounds this case. I don't think there's anyone in Boston or the area that hasn't heard of this case. I don't know where they would have to be to have not heard of it.
I know. And that's why I feel like jury selection is going to be so difficult the second time around. But you're right. You bring up the experts, and I felt like a lot of this case was a battle of the experts that we saw because, there was obviously, again, I mentioned ARCA. I was like, wow, that was very compelling. And that is one of the things that really got me, as well as the medical examiner saying, we can't say that this is from a car accident and it was just very confusing. And I did want to ask you though, as far as contributors in the case, you guys did not talk to Turtle Boy. Was there a reason, or just did you approach him?
Turtle Boy is a part of the story. We approached him. He had a deal at the time, an exclusive deal with another producer, so he wasn't allowed to interview with us. But we felt like he's certainly a part of the story. So we feel like we represented him without having to interview him.
Okay, got it. I was just curious as to why, but that makes sense. And I think I heard that because I felt like the creators that were featured mainly were very anti-Karen. I don't know if
the creators, what do you mean?
Or the contributors. Like you had the reporters, Christina Rex, Ted Daniel, and then like Jennifer Coffindaffer is very well known as being anti-Karen. Same with I don't know his full name, but he has the channel Yellow Cottage Tales.
Oh, he's Kevin Lenahan.
Very anti-Karen. Right. So I did feel like they were featured a lot. I don't know if that was just by chance or.
We filmed with a lot of people who didn't make it into the cut because there were so many people, but we feel like there was again in trying to achieve that balance, we filmed a lot with the pinks, we call them, the people that were out in front of the courthouse, and we during opening statements we see the pinks. There was a lot of coverage, I think, in the series about the pinks, and we felt like we needed to balance that out. So we did have Jennifer and we did have Kevin. The reporters worked great for us because they would say, well, it could be this or it could be that. They would help us present both sides. And what was most important to me was getting John's friends. And they were wonderful. And I feel, as many people do, that John gets lost in all the noise around this case. And one of the things we tried to do is try and keep him as a presence as much as we could, because there was a lot of content to cover in terms of the trial, but just have the viewers not forget that there's a wonderful man who's dead in some mysterious way. And let's not lose sight of John. So that was really important. His friends were wonderful, Brendan and John and Tara. So that was really important.
Brendan Kane, actually, I've seen him in a bunch of different documentaries, and I said this one, it really, he cried, and I hadn't seen any of John's friends actually really break down, and that was such a special moment, and just hearing him talk about how he thought about John's death, and it just gave him comfort almost to know that maybe he went peacefully. I had never heard that before. And again, it just made you remember that a great man is dead. A police officer is dead in a very mysterious way. And we need to remember that he was a human and he had family and friends, and how devastating it is.
It's so important. I worry that the family's never going to have closure. And that John's friends aren't too. We have a second trial coming up, but when they talk about, I think John's friend says the first thing I thought of was, oh no, the family's going to have to go through this again. This is really, really hard on them.
Yeah,
And so your heart has to go out to them.
of course. And did you reach out to the family? I'm sure they didn't want to talk, or I mean, I
They
would.
actually they had an exclusive deal with a different production company as well.
Oh,
The
okay.
family did, and they were John and Brendan. When I interviewed them, I asked them, why have you been kind of quiet throughout this whole time? And they just felt like they wanted to let the legal system do its thing and let justice be served, but they didn't feel at the end of the trial that that justice had been served. So then they said, okay, we've got to start speaking out now. So I think they did more interviews then, because they were on the quieter side. You heard, like I said, a lot from the Pinks, and they were out every single day in the morning, all day long.
Mhm.
But there wasn't a large contingent of the Justice for John O'Keefe folks out um, until the end. It'll be interesting to see how that balances out in the second trial.
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, it's like I'm ready for the second trial because I do, I do follow both sides. It's so wild to say both sides, but yeah,
No,
that's the
that's true.
truth of it.
It's
Yeah,
true. Yeah, yeah. No, I do too.
right.
I do too.
Yeah, and so you're kind of just like, I wish a lot of the noise could be kind of removed from this and we could just go back to the trial, focus on the evidence. And that's, that's where I've kind of been sitting here, is like, let me see what goes on in a second trial, because I told you how I felt with the first. And then watching the docuseries, I was like, well, wait, so what exactly happened now? Now I'm confused. But there have been rumors going around, Terry, that Karen walked off of the set because she was upset. Is there any truth to
No,
that?
no, that's not true at all. I don't know where that came from. I mean, there were times when we had Karen was very involved in her defense, and she wanted to be with the defense team in that war room every single minute when she wasn't in the courtroom. So there were times, because they didn't know what their schedule was, where we would schedule an interview, like let's say at noon on a Saturday with Karen, and she found out that everybody was in the war room working on the case, and she was like, let's reschedule, because she wanted to be with her team. She worked as hard as they did, um, every minute. I mean, early in the morning and late at night putting this case together. So no, but that's not true at all. She never walked off.
Wow, a rumor. Could you
There
imagine?
are a
Yeah,
lot of rumors to sort through, a lot
I
of
was,
speculation.
I was gonna say, can you
I
imagine
mean,
a rumor?
I hear, I still hear stuff, all day long about this and that. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
I know. Trust me, I know. And there was a protective order that was filed the other day for, and it's really, it's wild. It's never ending. But was there anything that you were shocked upon hearing, that maybe you didn't expect to hear from maybe Alan Jackson or Karen herself, or anyone really?
Uh, well, in the trial, I had not heard about Michael Proctor's texts. So that was a surprise when I saw him on the stand. They talked about Michael Proctor and how they were going to cross him when we were in the war room, but I didn't know all of that. So in terms of the trial, I think that was surprising. Most of it we knew what was coming, but um, there were really no surprises. We were just there trying to be a fly on the wall, just documenting what we could. In the war room, we would have 3 cameras, and they would just kind of silently move around the room while Karen and Alan and the team worked. I mean, I guess that would be surprising, is how focused they could stay. I mean, we were pretty low key, but how focused they could stay on their case and what they were doing while we were in the room. And we had mics, they had mics on, or we had mics on the table, and the war room was all pre-lit. Or how much, I guess, surprising how much access they gave us. I'd say, well, could we come to your hotel room before you go to trial tomorrow? And sure. So we would show up with a camera at 7:30 in the morning, and Karen's making coffee and curling her hair, and Alan's getting ready for his day, or David. And, so I think that access, that they were in such an intense situation, but
Yeah.
still giving us that access, it was incredible. And I think that's why the documentary feels like you are there, because we were.
I know. And I think that is also what's so confusing about this, Terry, is like you said, like Karen and her attorneys invited you in. She was an open book. She wanted us to hear all of this. She wanted us to, clearly. And that's where my confusion lies, I guess. And one thing I was disappointed in, and I feel like this is not your fault, because it's not important, let's say, to the trial or to John O'Keefe. So I want to respect that. But I was just curious if anybody was going to ask Karen and Alan about that little snuggle moment they had outside of the Boston restaurant. Do you know what I'm talking about? I mean, that picture went viral. People were trying to figure out if it was AI. I wanted someone to ask them about this so badly, but
We didn't feel like that was part of the story that we were telling. That, but I think that happened during deliberations. It was the very, very, very end, and there's a group of people that's been together day and night for 11 weeks, and it's a very close team. They worked really closely together. It's not my place to comment on that. I saw it, and it's one of those things that I just let go. That's not part of our story.
of course. And again, I acknowledge that, but it's as a whole, when you're looking from the outside and you're experiencing media, like actual news shows like News Nation, get an AI expert on and try to pick this apart, you're like, what is this case? Like, what is happening? It's a movie, truly it is.
Yeah, it's interesting that people are out there. Karen became so high profile even during the trial. She started off pretty high profile, but by the time we were finished filming, if we tried to film with her walking down the street, for instance, 3 people would come up. Oh, Karen, everyone knew Karen. And we were in a hotel in Boston, and the trial's 30 miles south in Dedham. Yeah. So she became very, very high profile, so that there were people out there, taking pictures that obviously they didn't realize people were taking. But it just, that goes to the buzz and the noise and how high profile this has become in that area.
Absolutely. And I could talk to you forever. I know you have to run to another interview, but I hope and pray that John O'Keefe gets justice and his family can put this behind him. And thank you so much for your time, Terry. And everybody can watch A Body in the Snow, the trial of Karen Read on ID on March 17th, which is Monday. And then they can stream on Max the next day. The episodes are released 2 on the first night and then 3 on the second. Is that correct?
2 on the first night, 2 on the second night, and the last on the third night.
Okay, perfect. Well, Terry, and where can anybody find you if they want to follow you?
They can't.
They can, okay. I saw an X account. I wasn't sure if that was actually yours. It was okay. So never mind.
No. I stay pretty low key. I'm not on any social media platforms.
You're a very smart woman. So
stay low key. So, but thank you very much for your time and for your interest in the case.
Of course, and congratulations on a great docuseries.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. So thanks so much.
That 9-dash line. And Ted Cruz said, look, if you're not into geopolitics, you won't notice this. I mean, hello.